A popular story for you, so we bring it back for an encore. It's well known that many of our viewers often get nostalgic about the good old days. Well, back in 1999, 26 years ago, Farmweek went to Houston, Mississippi for the Flywheelers Festival. What is that, you ask? Well, it's the wheel deal. Here's that story, and we pick up with the original intro on June 3rd, 1999 by former Farmweek anchor Artis Ford.
Well, you hear a lot of talk these days about the end of the century approaching as well as the millennium. Well, now it's an understatement to say that agriculture has changed in that time. There's a group in Mississippi that's working to make sure that the relics of our agricultural and rural past will be around in the next century. Members of the Mississippi Valley Flywheelers Association collect, restore, and exhibit antique farm equipment. They gather in Houston in April and September of each year to let future generations know what the good old days were really like. Farmweek visited the Flywheelers at their April show. To see them is impressive, but to truly experience them, you have to hear them. They're called flywheel engines, the name coming from the heavy flywheels that make them run. In the early part of the 20th century, they helped to modernize farms and businesses as American agriculture moved from manpower and animal power to mechanical might.
A lot of the old fellers, they get a kick out of it. They say, well, man, my dad had one of these, and I learned how to plow on one of those, and it just goes on, and that's what we're in it for.
I guess it's like collecting matchbooks or Barbie dolls or whatever you happen to collect. You can't get enough of them once you get started.
In addition to flywheel engines, the Mississippi Valley Flywheelers Association devotes itself to the preservation of other historic agricultural equipment like tractors and farm implements. The association holds flywheel festivals on the last weekends of April and September in Houston, Mississippi. The events give the association's members a chance to pass on the history they've learned to children and adults. The festivals attract up to 25,000 visitors and exhibitors from 10 to 15 states. Besides the antique farm equipment, there's also an arts and crafts fair and a play area for children. In spite of their size and weight, the gasoline and kerosene-fueled engines develop a small amount of power by today's standards. For example, this 1917 Hercules 600-pound engine generates 1.5 horsepower. The metal flywheels provide the momentum to keep the engine in motion between the times the single cylinder fires.
Every engine has a flywheel of some kind. You may not necessarily see it, which you don't now in cars and trucks and so forth, but it's still there.
In spite of their low horsepower, the flywheel engines were serious equipment for farms and rural businesses. Their heyday was from the late 1800s into the 1930s, when large areas of the United States did not have electricity. The engines could generate electricity, pump water, grind corn, and power anything which could be turned by a drive belt.
Well, they had one engine that pulled many machines. They carried the engine from one machine to the other. Now you have all machines, each one has an engine on it.
Bobby McGowan remembers when a flywheel engine powered his uncle's machine shop in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. The oldest engine in McGowan's 17-strong collection is a 3-horsepower model built in 1909.
It will surprise you how these old folks built these engines with a hammer and a chisel and maybe a file. They didn't have the modern machinery to build it like we did.
This 1916 Galloway is the oldest engine in Ron Diffenderfer's collection. The television engineer caught the old iron bug 18 years ago.
They're just a whole lot of fun to play with. They're a lot of work to get them rebuilt, because usually they're pretty old. They're 50, 60, sometimes 80 years old. But I just get some kind of fascination out of that simple machinery operating.
They didn't have electric back in those days on the rural areas and even in the towns. So they'd have a gasoline engine on the wash machine, and they'd have a big long extension pipe which they'd run outside. They'd run the engine inside, washing the clothes, and the exhaust would go outside.
Francis Werner says if you wanted a Maytag brand clothes washer in those days, it came with a 2-cycle engine. With attachments, you could do more with it than clean clothes.
Maytag was very large in the manufacturing business. They made a wash machine, and it didn't only wash clothes. The Maytag ground corn, it ground meat, it washed clothes. It had all sorts of attachments that went with it.
The owners and restorers of the antique tractors on display love their equipment as much as the Flywheelers. It may be romantic to long for the good old days, but one has to remember farming was just as difficult a business when these tractors were new as it is now. They have a beauty, however, that can't help but evoke pleasant memories for those who remember when these machines were a part of everyday life. They proved to be the inspiration for 18-year-old Jason Pickens of Houston, Mississippi, to restore this Farmall tractor. It belonged originally to his grandfather, Jack.
It's a year 56 model. It's an LP gas, 300 Farmall. It was up on our old cotton picker, but we took it out and changed the gears up on it so it can run forward instead of reverse. And I wanted to restore it because a lot of other people restored theirs, and I want to bring mine out here to show it off too, like everybody else.
There's an antique tractor pull on Saturdays as collectors pit their machines against the weight sled. It's not important who wins, it's the camaraderie that matters.
We come all the way from east of St. Louis, Missouri, which is in Belleville, Illinois, to this show because we love the people down here. The hospitality is fantastic, and you have a good crowd of people coming through.
It's a real close-knit group. You know, these people care about one another and enjoy being around one another. And that's one of the important things with our hobby is it's truly a social event at one of these shows for people who exhibit.
Believe it or not, the Flywheelers still exist, and they're still putting on 2 festivals a year. Zach was in Houston, Mississippi himself not long ago to see what that festival is like now, and he'll have that story for you shortly.